Hello and welcome. My name is Martin from the CCL Academy tutor team. Welcome to this short presentation all about coronavirus and compliance. Now I'll say more about the background and the plan in a moment, but suffice to say for now, we at the CCL Academy are going to be here to help you through this crisis in the compliance sense, and this is intended to be the first of a series of short videos that cover certain aspects that perhaps we should be considering whilst we're in the midst of this pandemic. So let's start off with a little bit of background, shall we? So in terms of background, to this one, well, we know, I know that coronavirus is dominating our lives at the moment. Many of us, in fact, most of us are working from home. And what I've tried to put together here is some thoughts on the impact that the domination of coronavirus and the impact it's having is going to have on compliance matters in particular. And my aim, as you can see, is to stimulate your thought process a little bit. Now, our broad agenda for doing this is we're going to consider things across 3 staff constituencies. So we're going to look at 3 constituencies. I'll point out what I mean by that in a moment. And then we're going to finish off with a bit of a look at some of the emerging issues that perhaps we should be mindful of at this difficult time. So kicking off the 3 constituencies, well, as you can see, I've put down 3 of them here. We've got the compliance team. That's our major consideration here because I'm presuming that most of you are part of the compliance team at your firm. So we'll consider the impact on us in general there. Then we'll move on to look at the impact on others, and we'll be looking at that impact as to how it affects us in compliance. We'll talk a little bit about senior management because many of you, a number of you, will also be senior management team members as well. We'll be considering some of the things that perhaps you should be thinking about at that level. And then, as I say, finally, we'll be covering some emerging issues. So 3 constituencies to start with. So number 1, the compliance team. Now, we obviously are getting used to this situation where we are working at a distance. We're remote from our colleagues. The physical distancing is appropriate at the current time. We're probably not even in the same office. We might not even be in the same cities. And obviously our ability to support what we see as our clients as compliance, which is the other members of the firm in particular, is more challenging as a result of that. We need to make them aware that we're still here. So perhaps some sort of regular messaging might do that by email, perhaps the occasional video conference or whatever, perhaps a mention at senior management town hall meetings or whatever may be going on is sensible to reinforce that we are still trying to do our job in these trying circumstances. Clients in particular need to be aware that we're still here to escalate matters, to seek advice from and the like. That's important. Part of our role, in fact, some of you that are watching this, it may be your sole role, is perhaps monitoring. Now, monitoring becomes invariably much more difficult when you're doing it from a distance. Are you still able to access the work systems and the like from a distance? You're certainly not able to see what people are up to from a distance. So monitoring is a challenge and has got to be thought of quite carefully in terms of changing the way it might be done over this period. In general, and this isn't only compliance, but in general, keeping compliance on track, keeping projects, on track, deciding what projects you could afford to hibernate, which ones you want to put as your number 1 priority at this time is clearly very, very important. You don't want to use up valuable working hours while someone is able to work using it for projects that perhaps aren't as important as others. So think quite carefully about which compliance projects you want to prioritise. Moving into our second staff constituency, our client staff, if you like, the other employees that obviously are set up at home. The setup varies. Have they got the access that they need? Have they got all the access that they need? In particular, if they're front office, are their interactions with clients being recorded as they were before? Or is that more difficult? Clearly, face-to-face activity with clients is going to be at a minimum, and if you are lucky enough to be onboarding clients at this time, that clearly presents challenges about ID and CDD and the like. And it's important that other employees are made aware and know that their responsibilities for suspicion reporting and the like, they haven't changed. They're still there. So they need to be aware of that, and they need to be aware that they can still utilise systems to do that, and they need to be having those systems, having access to those particular systems. The third and perhaps the most important constituency is the senior management team. And in terms of the senior management team, obviously number one in their minds at the moment will be business impact. Business impact for this is huge. Many businesses are struggling. We've got widespread price falls in asset classes. We've got wild price durations combining with that as well, which makes things difficult. Cash flow clearly needs regular review. Financial resources need regular review. I don't know how forgiving the regulators will be when we get to the end of this if these things aren't kept on top of, so to speak. What I think can easily be forgotten with senior managers' focus on business impact is perhaps keeping the spirits up in the broader group. Keeping the momentum going so that when we do get through this, and we will get through this, that the firm is really ready to fire on all cylinders and move ahead at a pace. So, as I say, town hall meetings, regular communication, perhaps calling out to particular individuals on a regular basis and phoning them up, and to an extent just saying, how are you? How are you coping? You know, keeping the spirits up is a vital aspect for senior management, I would suggest, at this time. Finally, emerging issues. Now, we know that the government has been, or appears to be, pretty amazing in terms of the support they're providing at this time of pandemic and virtual lockdown. And we've got things like, I'm referring to obviously things like the coronavirus business interruption loan schemes and the ability to reclaim 80% of salaries up to a certain level for people that would otherwise be made redundant, so they become, as they describe it, furloughed. Now, these new support facilities, information about them is being released all the time. When they're announced, we're not quite sure about the detail. Over the days that follow, more and more detail begins to emerge. So it is difficult to get clarification, certainly early on. And if you have specific queries, it's very difficult to get certainty by, I don't know, perhaps ringing up a helpline and speaking to someone, because that is very difficult at the moment. Now, I think furloughing, this idea of temporarily putting a job into, if you like, hibernation, and over that period being able to claim 80% of salary up to £2,500 a month for those people is a key example of that. Now, the question I ask myself is, these furloughed individuals, they're supposed to be not working. Now, what happens if you choose to furlough someone and someone within the office rings them up and says, well, what happened to that? How far did you get in that project? Is that bringing them back into the workplace? And subsequent to all of this, will that perhaps be seen as removing the furloughing? It's difficult. We've got to think quite carefully about this. Once this is all over, We don't want to have to be handing masses back and being disciplined for doing the wrong thing or doing things inappropriate. So try and be a little bit, I know it's difficult, but try and be a little bit circumspect about the decisions you make at this stage so that you don't end up stacking up problems for later. Now that's about all I was going to say for the moment. Obviously, as I say, this is one of a series of videos, so you will get more of these from myself and colleagues at CCL Academy. Thank you so much for listening. It's great to communicate with you. Here are my details and our details. Please don't hesitate to reach out if you think we can help and just to give us your general comments on this. So thank you for your time. Thank you for watching and speak to you again soon. Thanks a lot.